non-Westerners, what things about Western culture in general do you find odd? Story 1. I don't know if this is just a Western thing, but having a mountain of purely decorative pillows on your bed that you take off before you go to sleep, and put back on in the morning, I don't understand the point. Your bed looks fine without them. That's like putting a whole bunch of purely decorative cutlery on your table, and then taking it all off when you go to eat your dinner. Story 2. Oh boy, I'm Korean and married to a Caucasian, so I had several minor culture shocks when I started getting to know my husband better. 1. Chargers, like the things you place below dinner plates. I still have no idea what they are for. 2. Calling my in-laws by their first names, very strange, but very nice. 3. Shoes inside the house. 4. My in-laws' politeness and respect for their kids, and their consideration of their kids' feelings. I grew up in a household where respect was given to the parents, and to the parents alone. Sometimes I catch myself thinking that my husband was coddled in some ways, but then I remember he is the man I love because of the way he was raised, which makes me thankful and more appreciative for this different style of parenting. 5. The importance placed on sports. My in-laws are incredibly into sports and will play pickup football on the holidays when everyone's together. They're also all getting matching jerseys this Christmas. I thought this was something you only saw on TV, not in real life. Sometimes I feel like I'm on the Wonder Years when I'm over at their home. It's kind of cool to watch. They're just so classically American. 6. Cheese on everything. So much cheese and butter. I remember being very gassy the first several times I was invited to my husband's home for food. The biggest culture shock to me, though, is how independent American children are, and the importance that is placed on kids leaving the nest. It seems that in America there is a stigma on adult children who choose to live with their parents. In Korea, kids have extremely close ties to their families and commonly live with their parents until marriage, even if they have stable careers. It's common to share a futon with your siblings. Even as an adult, it's even common to share a room as a family and all sleep on the floor together. I had no idea this was considered strange until I was telling a friend of mine how my mom, dad, sister, and I all shared a huge bed together when we went on vacation, and she looked at me like I was a pervert, but I love cuddling with my family in one big dog pile. Edit. I guess I'm not the only one who is confounded by chargers. According to thematientists, they are used purely for decoration in table settings. They look like this, the gold plates, and they are not eaten off of, but china is placed upon them. Story 3. Why is violence considered normal to show on television and such, but boy are you in trouble if a woman dares to show as much as a nipple? Lawsuits ensue. Oh yeah, also suing everybody for everything. Story 4. How you interact with a much older person. It's just so casual. Edit. Please forgive for poor grammar and focus on what I'm trying to convey. I'm not entirely sure why some people are getting mad. I don't think either way is better than the other. A lot of you are campaigning respect should be earned regardless of age. I'm not disagreeing one bit. I was just answering what I found odd compared to my culture as a Vietnamese born. I grew up in different culture. I was raised with the mentality to be more polite to our elders because we give them the benefit of the doubt that they are deserving of our respect. We optimistically assume they have paid their life dues, helped build this nation and raise the generation after them. So now it's their turn to be taken care of. Elders also have a responsibility to share their wisdom, guidance and fortitude. There's so much more, but I'll stop here. And yes, respect your elders within reason. There are people who are old despicable that don't deserve any respect. I don't give it to them. If they're not doing anything harmful, I do what any other polite person would do. I ignore them, even if I know he is a 90-year-old who was a general in the Nazi SS. Sorry for the rush finish, I got to go. TLDR, age does not equate more respect. We respect their journey and experience. Story 5. How elementary school kiddos sit on the floor during an assembly or reading time. In Eastern Europe you do not ever sit on the floor under any circumstances when you are in school, ever. Story 6. You seem to have this separation between animal and food, which leads to a lot of vegetarians and vegans. It seems like you don't want to think of them as the same thing, and your insane nonsensical language. Why the can't I spell elephant with an F? What would that actually change other than some stupid grammatical snobbishness? Story 7. I think most Asians can relate to the fact that shoes inside the house always felt a bit odd. I don't really care, but I find it uncleanly. Wow, I sound so Asian. Story 8. Kenyan checking in. Eye contact. Oh my god, so much eye contact. Meeting people for the first time and having them peer into your freaking soul. Took some getting used to. The low power distance between authority figures and the general population, teachers, politicians, doctors, parents, etc. command a lot more respect here, and people are more reverential in their dealings with them. The power play and divisions within schools, especially high school. I thought Hollywood had exaggerated this, but Reddit tells me otherwise. More American than Western. The fact that you can spread peanut butter and jam on bread and call it a sandwich. What? I have more, but I'm on my phone right now. Will update. Story 9. That little girls, about 2 to 6-year-old and thereabouts, wear a female version of bikini when they go out in the sun. Girls under 6 or 7 don't have, so the bikini top seems ridiculous to me, but that's just me. Story 10. Why weight and appearance is such an insensitive subject. It's quite normal in the Orient to comment on how a person is fat and needs to lose weight or that they need to improve their appearance. There is no contempt behind the words either. The person usually just tries to mean well. Compliments are quite common too, for both men and women. Hearing how good-looking you are from random people in the street and etc., but not so much in the West. Story 11. A large number of people driving around with dead deer bleeding out in the back of their pickups. My most recent trip through Wyoming had me feeling like I was in a horror movie. Story 12. This is sort of culture shock in the other direction, I guess, but because we have such neat plumbing in most of Europe and North America, we simply flush toilet paper once we are done with it. Having traveled around, I found that this wasn't the case everywhere. I found this in Greece, and when I lived in Thailand for a little while. They throw the toilet paper in a bin next to the toilet. I had a hard time reconciling myself with this practice, because, well, you now have a bin full of TP with on it just sitting there. That was rough for me. Story 13. A few that come to mind. 1. How kids yell at their parents in public, and the parents just go, oh, what am I going to do? 2. How the elderly are treated in the Middle East. It's unthinkable to put away people in a retirement home. 3. How family ties can be so weak. Eve heard of siblings who don't speak to each other or spend years without seeing each other, etc. Edit. I wasn't implying these are bad things. I'm sure there are reasons for that, and you gave some of them. I'm just stating what I find odd and strange, i.e. something that I have never seen in my culture. Story 14. When a Western child gets in trouble in school, he gets suspended. What is this? A week without school? Gee, that should teach me. Also, it seems like in US, as soon as it starts to snow, school stop. In my years of going to elementary and high school, only once have we not gone to school because of snow, and it's still snowing a lot now, but we must go to school. Just baffles me. Story 15. As an American living in an Arab culture, I would say I get asked a lot about two things: family relationships and dating. In my part of the Arab world, it is not at all common for a young man to live alone, or even want to. I wonder if they even could, since most of them can't cook, wash clothes, or do most of those household chores. It is unheard of for an unmarried woman to live alone, unless you're in the biggest and most westernized of cities, and even then the neighbors will talk. It's not just that there isn't the opportunity to do this, jobs and money being tight, but the desire is curtailed by close family connections and interdependence. Dating is a whole nother animal. If and when it is done here, it is done in secret, especially outside of the big cities. Gossip is a key form of entertainment, and reputations are very important, especially for women. Sometimes couples agree to appear to be dating so each of them can date someone else who might not be socially acceptable, or acceptable to their family, and the dating game is undertaken with marriage in mind. It is strange for most people here to hear that we date and just sort of see what happens. It's too high risk here to take that kind of approach. Just some observations based on questions I'm asked by a lot of the youth here. Story 16. I'm sure the people out in the middle of Africa would find it odd that we take large quantities of water, to them a scarce and much-needed life-giving essential resource, then just in and flush away with even more water. They may not be on Reddit, so posting on their behalf. Edit. I get it as to why and how we are able to do this in the West. OP simply wanted things that non-Westerners may consider odd. Pretty sure that this would be considered odd by those without access to plentiful clean water. Story 17. 3 seconds rule. I think it's gross to pick up food from the floor and eat it. I'm not sure if it's a culture thing or not, but I seem to find it more common among white people. Then again, most people around me are white. Edit. Guys, it's not the consequence of pick up dropped food, but the habit of picking up food from floor table. I'm sure I'm very biased on this matter, but my grandmother used to babysit me from a hospital from time to time. She was not a patient, but chief of medicine, and was very strict about it for obvious reasons. Say I dropped a piece of dry rib on the floor, all I can think of is all the feet that have walked over the spot.
I'm starting to think him the OCD frikir. Lol.
Story 18. Tipping. In non-Western, or should I say non-North American countries, tipping is a forced corruption issue most of the time. Non-corrupt people earn a living and accept gifts but do not expect it. In North America, it's a forced expectation, so much so that labor laws cater to this method of low wages. If you are getting paid to do your work, then get paid just like everyone else. Don't expect extra just for doing your job. Westerner here. Edit. Wow, seems like I hit a soft spot. The question was what's found as odd. Not sure why discussion is downvote worthy. Anyway, the corruption mentioned is more of an extortion a la mafia, establishment fees or area-based cuts or bribery, getting electric bill paid in India to reconnect power. In contrast, North America is not as corrupt, but businesses have legislation to protect their methods: service reconnection fee, low labor wage to the deliberate expectation of tips. You might as well conclude that the gods favor the rich legally in America. If everyone stopped tipping in North America, then workers would seek other careers, forcing businesses to pay higher for similar jobs to be filled. Story 19. No ketchup on pizza, or worse, no mayonnaise with fries. You guys have extra large combo burgers pizzas, but no mayonnaise, like WTF. I have odd looks on me whenever I ask ketchup with my pizza. Edit. Alright, to all who is saying that ketchup sweetens the taste of pizza, you'd be surprised. Try it: one slice with ketchup for me, and for science, I too also put mustard and mayo to the pizza, and eat pasta with ketchup and mayo. You're not alone. We are the one to clarify things. I am from an Eastern European country. I grew up on here, but lived on America and Canada frequently. My host parents in Canada would look at me with an odd look on their face when I put ketchup mayo mustard on pizza, or eat pasta with ketchup mayo mixed up. I do the same thing when they don't put it KM on pasta. Even when I was in high school cafeteria, do you know how odd it is to be the only one who orders a slice and ask for ketchup? It felt like everyone in the room was judging me. I also had weird looks on me from the owners and my Asian friends when we were in a Greek-owned pizza restaurant at Boston and asked if they had any ketchup. My Brazilian, Colombian, Mexican, and Dutch friends backed me up when I did this thing in a restaurant, but not the Belgian friend. He said they never do that. Odd. The people who eat fries with something other than ketchup, mayo, mustard, barbecue sauce. That's disgusting. How does that feel? Story 20. It's how easily that guys and girls just want to get along and have fun. After reading all those posts where the guy-girl are thinking why don't you kiss me, already I find it a little odd that people in the West are very straightforward in terms of their expectations. Where I come from, India, guys and girls are so freaking shy about disclosing their intentions. It's probable because of the irrational societal values that we have had for quite some time now. If a girl goes out with a guy and people get to know about it, then she's termed as the town. With the new generation being more expressive about their feelings, things are changing. But it's still weird. Being a 27-year-old guy, I have to think 100 times before telling a girl that I like her, despite me being in the capital and not some remote part of India. Most of the situations that I have witnessed where a guy-girl comes and confesses his or feelings invariably makes them a satiric. I don't understand how can you go ahead suppressing the most basic human desires of peer group socializing, but it's the opposite in the West. Odd but rational. When my 7-year-old sister, adopted from China, first came into our home in America, she was very surprised by the ice machine built into our fridge. In China, they don't put ice in their drinks, IRC, they don't even have cold drinks. Actually, I think that might be true of Europe too. Edit. There's some conflicting information in the replies to my comment, so take what I've said with a grain of salt. Edit 2. Sorry for the confusion. When I said Europe did it too, I meant just not putting ice. I know you have cold drinks. Edit 3. Yes, I get it, these things vary from country to country. I can do without the sarcasm. Story 21. Here we say gracias and everyone answers provecho before and after every meal, which can be translated to thank you and enjoy. We also ask if we are allowed to leave if we need to leave the table before everyone else is finished talking to each other. This happens at every meal, and we are like this even if we are drinking tea and eating bread with cheese. I used to think that it was like this in the rest of the world, but turns out we are extremely polite for no good reason. Story 22. The chilled outness between strangers, new friends. So casual, and I don't mean rude, but like, not super respectful and super etiquette. Like, I actually find this really cool, because with the Asians you see with most Asian adults act really fake, and with other adults and families, and even with good family friends and stuff, acting like they are super civilized and superior. With Westerners you guys are chilled, it's aight. Story 23. I am from Africa, study in Asia. One time, while my friend was playing rugby, one of the Asian players walked up to him and asked out loud, "Do you have AIDS?" Story 24. Parent-child relationship. I don't quite get the parent-children relationship in the Western society. You know, how you guys frown upon if the kid is living with his parents after 18. I don't get it. Most parents love their children unconditionally and undergo great hardships to raise their children to a point where they can earn and live independently. After all this, the guy-girl goes off to college, gets a job, and lives independently, and finds the idea of living with their parents absurd. I mean, isn't it the responsibility of the kid to ensure that he can pay back their parents by living together, supporting them emotionally and financially? Edit. Also the other way around, like how some parents expect their kids to leave home and take care of themselves when they are 18. Story 25. So I date a Canadian. When I first went to visit her family, I referred to her parents as Mr. MS. They thought it was the weirdest thing. I grew up always referring friends' girlfriends' parents as Mr. MS, M from MA. Story 26. South Asian, living in Canada. Few things. 1. The food. There is an obsession in North America with the type of food available. You got your varieties of candy, cereal, snacks, junk, fast food, etc., and you are constantly bombarded with ads about which brand is the best. When you finally feel guilty enough to start eating healthy, you're subjected to a whole slew of healthy or organic options which honestly seem to exist solely to burn a hole in your wallet. 2. Parent-children interaction. I have seen so many kids throw tantrums over minute that I'm really surprised parents don't snap. In South Asia, that annoying kid would have had some sense smacked into him in about 5 seconds. Some can't control their kids and the kids are playing, which really boggles my mind. There's no sense of respect for your elders and all that jazz. 3. Retirement homes. This concept was completely new to me. I don't know what it is, but the very fact that you would ship off your parents to live in a home speaks volumes about the culture's insistence on viewing the elderly as a burden. This is funny because when the children were younger and dependent, most parents don't dump their asses in a group home, okay, maybe daycare. To me it just seems like if you send your parents to a home, you have failed in your duty as their child to take care of them when they're old. The whole idea that they'll be in a place with medical help supervision is bullshit, and it's rationalizing your own laziness refusal to take care of the people who gave birth to you. For careers. Everyone here is focused all on their jobs. I mean, it's similar back home, but people still find time to indulge in fun things, social gatherings, hanging out, etc. Here, I find folks are so focused on their jobs that their home lives take a back seat and they are exclusively defining success achievement with their work. Other areas of self-improvement and enrichment take a back seat. I'm actually guilty of the last one. I've been trying to fight it now, but it's a work in progress. Story 27. Western culture is just too vague. It's difficult to lump them together. French, Brits, Dutch, Polish, Americans, etc., etc. I find eating a big turkey odd, having to put your marital status in your resume odd, licking off your finger after eating to clean it odd. Story 28. About the shoes thing. Why does everyone agree it makes no sense? When someone walks through my house, I prefer the dust from the ground rather than the sweat from their feet, at least it's dry. Also, Taking your shoes off is like settling in if I have a stranger in my house or someone unfamiliar or who is about to leave again. Keep your foot gloves on, Morka. Story 29. As an Asian, I find it slightly odd how Western parents seem to push their children to move out around 18. I'm not sure if this is a true representation by movies and TV shows, but it happens so much that I kinda believe it. Over here, it's so common for people to live with their parents until they get married. It doesn't mean you're not independent, because once you have a career, you take care of your parents by taking over the bill payments, food expenses, and sometimes even taking over the house mortgage. Story 30. Shoes in the house or room. I take my shoes off even when I stay at hotels. Also, how some white people can get so huge, not as in fat huge, but overall build. I'm only 6 foot tall and I'm already considered oversized for an Asian. Story 31. The relative freedom regarding drugs. And I've never really understood why it was normal to smoke various drugs or drink like a whale, then proceed to participate in having intercourse with various partners, especially from high school to college. Story 32. How to put it. That there are two alternatives, especially in America. Either you are so individualist that you won't even live with and share your wealth with your blood, your own relatives, or you support big government. Why can't people just be local communitarians, supporting quasi-socialism with their own relatives and a large amount of sharing with the local community, but keep a skeptical eye on government? It just seems like two extremes to me. It is just so sad when people go individualist with their own relatives, like grandparents not living with their kids, not even if one of them dies, then grandma just lives alone. So sad. Why cannot they move in with their kids and grandkids, save a shitton of money, letting their kids retire earlier or choose more fun, less paying professions that way by selling the house, free babysitting, no boredom as they get to play with grandkids, help in housework, actually have a purpose to live for, and so on. WDF, what is the use in having a large house for a couple in their 70s and no meaningful things to do? Just going golfing and such, basically wasting time, which they don't have much left. I don't get it at all. Leisure is not the purpose of life. Meaningful activity is, and what can be more meaningful than looking after your own offspring? People whose adult kids and grandkids live in California and they go retiring to Florida, I will never ever understand it. On a similar note, if your brother has to borrow money from you instead of just giving him money when he needs it, I'm not going to trust you as a friend, because it means you are treating a sibling like a friend. So how are you going to treat a friend then? You see, American conservatives. If people would share with their relatives more, it would reduce the case liberals make for big government, don't you think? Story 33. Korean here. Blowing nose in public. I nearly puked in high school once because of this fat white girl blowing her nose multiple times in class. No slurping even Asian noodles. I have made a few white people almost puke in a restaurant once while mad slurping my pho. I was too hungry to remember Western eating manners. I guess it's just considered disgusting here specifically, slurping hot Asian noodles that come with hot soup. Story 34. I get the people shouting yeah, alright or what have you at any event or concert, but who imagine a dumb drunk blonde on spring break, that I just can't comprehend. Story 35. It is politically correct to determine one's race by look at where their great-great-great-great-great-grandfather came from and then slapping that country in front of American. Half the time they don't even know, so you just generalize. For instance, we call anyone who is black, African American. Even though most of their heritage comes from South America, because the slaves coming from Africa often starved to death on the trip over. Indians, which were named by Columbus because he thought he was in India, are properly called Native Americans. There is one exception to the rule though. If you are white, you are just Caucasian, white, a honky cracker or anything else. None of us really care. I just wish we're all just called Americas. And if you really need to specify race, just call it what it is: black, white, mixed, etc. Story 36. Reading through this thread made me think about how polarized different cultures, even ones that are in close relation, are truly different. What we eat, where we work, even where we can be completely different if you don't live in a country like America or the EU, and can be mind-fuckingly alien. Story 37. People calling elders by their name. I still don't do it and I've lived here 9 years. Also public display of affection, coming from the Middle East. Very weird at first but I've gotten used to it. Story 38. As a Korean guy growing up in the US, I find the importance of receiving gifts kind of odd, but maybe I'm just jealous. Same with birthdays, how it's my special day and I can act like a brat because of it. I feel like a lot of my friends have this entitlement of getting gifts, as if it were a right. Their parents also buy presents a month ahead just to make sure they get the right gifts. Sometimes, they would get the gift returned so they can get the right thing. My parents bought me one thing I wanted or gave me money. It really doesn't have the personal touch to it, but at the same time, I don't stress out or throw tantrums about gifts. It's just whatever. Now as an adult, I don't care much about gifts or gifting. However, it's nice to get a thoughtful gift. I hate gift cards, but yeah, it's weird seeing people over the age of 12 acting like babies because of gifts or birthdays. I even see people over 20 acting like babies about this stuff. Story 39. Avoiding trouble. In Peruvian, I've been living in Montreal for 8 years now. Something that still shocks me is how often Westerners let other people step over them in order to avoid conflicts. Story 40. My senior year, a Korean foreign exchange student was on some of my group projects and we ended up being friends. A few of the things she found odd: huge yards, and not living right up beside your neighbor. I invited her over for dinner one day, and the house I and my roommates were renting had a small yard, and she was so very excited about the yard. When I showed her pictures of the 10 acres my parents live on, I thought she just kept saying, "Oh, it's so much, what do you do with all of it?" I was going on a trip with some friends over a weekend and called my parents out of courtesy to let them know where I was going to be. She happened to be in the room at the time, and my mom said she didn't want me going, and I told her too bad. I had it planned out and I was going, and she can't tell me I can't go because I'm an adult. She was absolutely shocked. "Miffles, you can't talk to your mother that way." "Yes, I can." It took her a really long time to understand sarcasm, and I'm still not totally sure she really got it. In Korea, eating or drinking in a university-level class is apparently very rude, while from my experiences in the US nobody gives the amount of money engineers in the US make compared to in Korea. She and I looked it up one day, and they make about half of what we do for the same type of work. Story 41. This is kinda in reverse, but it's got me spoiled. When I visited Italy, the shopping carts had 4 swivel wheels instead of just 2, made it where you could move the cart sideways and navigate much easier. Not sure why it never caught on over here. Story 42. I'm Australian, so technically I'm part of Western culture, though there are clear influences from Eastern cultures. Like I've never been in another person's house where taking your shoes off wasn't expected, that kind of thing. So with that in mind, when I was in the US, I was genuinely surprised when I got a strange look while I took off my shoes. Also tipping. In Australia you never tip, you go to a restaurant, you buy your food, you eat your food and the waiter does his job, then you leave. When I was visiting the US, I got horrible looks from everyone in my group when I left a restaurant without tipping. I was genuinely surprised when I learned that it is expected and extremely rude to not tip. Story 43. Why would you bathe and in the same room? Edit. I'm not talking about plumbing or lack thereof. I'm talking about how it is rather counterproductive doing both in a very confined space. Story 44. How if you can buy it frozen and ready to nuke they will buy it. I'm a Mexican who was taught how to cook at a young age. We very rarely use anything that is frozen, make mostly everything out of scratch. It just really disgusts me the amount of a person can feed their family from buying frozen. My ex-husband's family was white. His mom worked at a school cafeteria and wouldn't cook at home. I spent an entire month for the holidays at their house and only twice they cooked real food. His dad cooked steaks that were charred and also cooked chili beans with most of the ingredients from a can with the exception of the ground beef. That was also the first time I had ever heard of microwave bacon and managed to burn that. I cooked breakfast every morning and his brother was so thankful that I actually knew how to cook. What is so difficult about cooking real food? Story 45. I am British and almost everyone I know takes their shoes off at the front door. Don't get people saying that it is a non-Western thing. Why would you traipse all the on your shoes through the house? Even if it's just been wet outside you will still leave footprints. Just common sense really. Story 46. My mom came from the Philippines. She thought it was the grossest thing that Americans didn't wash there, but after they pooped I forgot what that little Filipino bucket thing is called. Story 47. Strip clubs. Why would you pay for a woman to dance and strip and make you horny, and then just leave? If I'm paying for anything related, might as well be the itself. Story 48. Asian, living in Boston. Phatic phrases as forms of greeting. How are you? Walks away as I start saying something. I can't put any meaning into that statement ever again, and I'm afraid I never want to know how anyone is doing ever again. Story 49. I am Korean, and I honestly never got why people don't take their shoes off upon entering their house. Don't they worry that their floors might get dirty? Story 50. How uneager people are to share things here. If your classmate doesn't have their boo, pen, or whatever with them, people will immediately offer to share theirs. In North America, you have to ask and people will very rarely spontaneously offer to share even if it's very obvious you can't do something because you don't have your stuff with you. Story 51. Not me but a friend or mine finds using toilet paper disgusting. Prefers using water. He asks would wipe yourself with a large paper towel instead of showering. How is that hygienic? Story 52. I don't know if it's exactly a Western thing but I find you guys are too obsessed with zombies and vampires. I'm from India and not even a single movie on these I have seen so far. Other thing is why you people are so stubborn to not accept metric system. Story 53. I'm an American not living in America, and I find Americans' obsession with guns to be frightening, and they're not really to use, they're just because I want to own 1,000 of them. Story 54. This may not be exactly on topic as most of Europe is considered Western culture, but I find it odd, as an American, that in many European countries men and women kiss on the cheek as a greeting, even someone you're meeting for the first time. Also toasting and the importance of making eye contact while doing so before you take your first sip of an alcoholic beverage. Story 55. Fancy pickup trucks. I can understand regular ones, but not the fancy kind. Also civilian Hummers. On the other hand, I really wish we could get cowboy boots here. Story 56. Somewhat relevant, but a friend of mine moved to here Ireland when he was 15 from Nigeria, the year after we were eating rice with something on a school trip, not eating Chinese food BTW, just rice was with it. It was his first time eating the stuff, and the disgusted look he gave was hilarious. He stated how he did not like this Irish food and we had to explain that it's actually Asian in origin but mostly used in Western versions of Asian dishes or just mixed in with Western meals, like chips. Story 57. As someone who grew up in the South, not rural backwoods South, suburban SC, it's funny to see the blending between a lot of Eastern culture and Western culture here. For instance, calling your elders by Mr., Mrs. Surname is important. To assume that you can call them by their first name will get you labeled as rude or having no manners. There are many who ask you to call them by their first names, but you never assume ever. Kids' table for dinner, totally normal, was raised to take off my shoes inside, but don't do it in my personal life, at least not immediately by the door, usually still take them off within 5 minutes of getting home though. Food cuisine is always pretty regionally sensitive, so not really worth bringing up. There was a big thread recently about how we converse as well. Southern culture is more like Eastern cultures in conversation where social cues and implied meaning is extremely important. Northern culture requires far more direct conversation and can be annoyed by talking around a point instead of getting to it. Story 58 Americans switch hands when they are eating steak. Fork stabs steak with left hand, knife cuts with right. When the desired piece has been cut they switch the fork to their right hand and eat the steak and drop the knife or move it to the left hand. It makes me laugh. Story 59 Lots of people are saying they think it's weird Americans wear their shoes in the house. Personally, I'd rather you wore your shoes in my house. I hate feet. I hate knowing bare feet are in the room. Story 60 I don't know if this is purely Western culture, but while using toilet paper, just toilet paper, we normally use water to wash down there. I mean, how do you ensure that you are fully clean after taking a dump with just tissue? Story 61 People jumping into their beds with shoes on. It's just disgusting. Your shoes have been everywhere and stepped on a lot of. Why would you place it where you sleep? Story 62 Seems like non-Westerners are more freaked out about germs, shoes in the house, wiping with TP instead of water, eating something after it fell to the floor for a second. Westerner are just tougher. Story 63 The amount of pressure placed on kids to be independent and the social no-no to the idea of a joint family, like the casualness of it when it comes to talking about your love life with family member siblings. Story 64 Toilets. If you have ever seen a squat toilet, that is what we used until the late 1800s when sitting toilets were invented for the wealthy. Cracked also agrees. Story 65 Like my Asian in-laws. I take my shoes off when I get home and never wear them indoors. However, where we differ is I don't wear house slippers either. I was perpetually barefoot as a kid. I like the feel of carpet or a cool tile floor on bare feet, and they are like put these on you'll catch a cold if your feet touch the cold floor.